Need a little wine?
Craving some tea? Well, you've come to the right place.
This is a little wine and a whole lot of tea with Chastity and Shauna.
Hello.
Hello.
Happy New Year, everybody. Here we are, January 1st, 2025.
Can't believe we're seeing the day.
So today we are going to have a little bit more of a serious conversation, and this is all about Shauna's story, which is very fascinating. So all about her adoption, her addiction over the years that really started out for her entering the world, and then where she's at today and everything she's overcome. I think a lot of people can probably resonate with like different parts of this story for sure. Some insight that she can have a little bit on adoption and just all of the things that she's gone through. So we're just gonna jump right into it and bring it back to the old days of so when's your birthday? When were you born?
August 17th, 1986.
So 86, when Shauna entered the world, except for she wasn't Shauna. So her mom gave her a different name. I'll let her tell you what that name is.
On my original birth certificate, my name is Shantae Machine, which later got changed, thank God, into Shauna.
Yeah, you don't give a Shantae vibe.
Imagine.
No, absolutely not. But okay, so 86. So where were you born? Like what city? Do you know that information?
I was born at Long Beach Hospital.
Okay. So I guess Long Beach, Shantae, kind of all goes, right? So for those of you who do listen and aren't familiar with California, I think a lot of people though know, good old Snoop Dogg LBC. That's how everybody knows.
Right.
Long Beach. But Shauna then was adopted with my stepdad, their family, and grew up in Whittier, California. So we were actually just going over some of her paperwork. So I thought like what's really cool, like fascinating, is that her foster mom took notes. And so she had some notes of like just like from the beginning of when she had, so like a couple of the things that were on there, and there's like dates and everything, and one of them was that I'm assuming it's because it just said, it's August 26th, that she was very shaky due to the drugs that were in her system when she was born. Do you know what drugs?
From what I hear, it was cocaine and alcohol.
Okay. So cocaine and alcohol is what was in her little baby body. And so then also on the 27th, her foster mom writes that she doesn't like to be undressed at all, screams even when her diaper is changed, which we were talking about that. I'm like, I'm assuming probably because it hurt. It was probably like in pain. I mean, Shauna knows more about like detoxing and things like that. And I don't know if you've had any withdrawal stuff over the years, which we'll get into that. But from what I've heard from people is when people do withdrawal, it's like, your body hurts. You literally feel like you're dying. So I can't imagine a little baby also like probably every touch I'm sure was awful.
Yeah, thankfully we don't remember much.
Yeah, like I almost wonder too, like if like certain things of like you have like a body recognition, like obviously you're not going to remember, but I feel like our bodies definitely like take in a lot of other things that like maybe our brain doesn't, right? So I wonder if like anything, like if you ever like even growing up, which you probably don't remember, if there was like little things that you like body almost like remembered.
One thing that I think has affected me is I found out that when the foster mother would have people or gatherings at the home, she would put me in a crib in a room by myself, and I used to cry for hours. So I
Wow.
think having my own children and then listening to them cry strike something within myself where I need to make it stop, like right then and there, because
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't imagine locking my kid up in a room for hours and just letting them cry and scream.
Yeah, that whole cry it out method, I'm like, I couldn't even do that with mine. I'm like, you know what? If she sleeps with me till she's 14, then she sleeps with me till she's 14. I don't even care. Because you know what? Like, I just, hearing those cries are just so sad. And I'm sure too, like, it was just like straight abandonment issues, I'm sure, from the beginning for you. Because
Yeah.
you not only were taken away from your mom, which most people would probably be like, well, she never knew her. You were literally attached to her. Like, in the womb, you have, like, that's why they say, like, a child's bond with a mother will never be understood. The abandonment for sure of not only being taken away from your mom, and then now you're with this other person who is taking care of you 24/7, and then like, oh, I'm going to be put left in a room. Is like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Am I going to be abandoned again? Like, that's what's so crazy to me about, like, just, I can't imagine, when you're like a baby and you can't explain, like, I feel that way with like animals sometimes. Like, what are they thinking? Like, do they literally think that we're just constantly like abandoning them all the time? And so, not to compare a dog with a baby, but you know what I mean. um, so I don't know, I found all of that. I think it's so awesome that you at least have like some of those notes to kind of like tell your story too. And then how, in those notes, there was also a lot of things of like when you recognized your mom, and when you recognized certain people, and which we were talking about, like, who's Aunt Trudy that she keeps talking about, but obviously it's probably somebody in her family, and that
I hope. Imagine I do have an Aunt Trudy out there. I'm about to
and
look for that sis.
and you have no idea. So, do you remember, like, at all at the point when, like, you were being looked at to be adopted? Because obviously, probably around that time, you were probably toddler age, so, like, what, 3?
I remember playing in a room on this jungle gym. Like it was like one of those plastic, I can't remember like the brand, but like they still have them. But it's like it looked like a little jungle gym that they would have inside the house. And I just remember this little boy just kept pushing me down. And
You're like, "What
then
the hell? Get me out of here."
yeah, I actually I wasn't her only foster child. There was like 5 of us, and I remember it was me, this little boy, this little redheaded girl, and then there was like actually 2 handicapped kids that she had in her home too. So it was like a full house,
Oh, wow.
but I don't remember anything really.
So then, based off of those notes, we saw that you were officially adopted, um, August, what was it, 21st?
12?
Oh, August 12th, 1991. So then you were 5. But then talk about, like, what that looked like before you were actually officially adopted.
From what I heard is that there's like a quote on, I don't even want to use the word, but it's like a trial run where it's like, okay, you go and live with this family, and if it doesn't work out, you have like a certain amount of time to like take them back. I don't know if things are
This
changed.
is defective. I would like to return, please.
Yeah, and I remember my dad telling me a story about how they when they were looking to adopt, there was like an actual adoption, like an adoption showing, which was like basically like a cafeteria sized room with like a bunch of playpens, social workers, and then the playpens would obviously have like a bunch of babies. And I remember my dad telling me like it reminded him of like a dog pound or like something where you would
Yeah, it's
go.
like what they do, like, at, like, these pet stores, like, "Come this Saturday from 12 to 2 and pick out your new family member."
Yeah, and he said that people would like you would literally go and then like look in the playpens and see if like, you see a child that you would want to adopt. And like my dad was like that he didn't feel comfortable being in that kind of situation. And I don't even think they have those anymore, thank God, because the 80s were pretty wild. But
Yeah.
um
Well, this was like, end of the 80s, early 90s. I mean, you would hope it'd be a little bit of a different process now. I mean, at least give
I
me
know.
a book or something versus like having to see. I can't imagine going into a room like that and seeing all these kids and then just being like, you can only pick one. And it just like,
I know.
just awful. And just so you're all aware, Shauna and I, how we get through life is dark humor. So if some of it makes you guys uncomfortable, we're just going to apologize now. So some of the jokes, it's like, oh my God, she's so insensitive. But this is how we get through get through life, right?
Yes.
But yeah, that's crazy. So basically, you don't really know when that trial run per se like started, but you probably figure, I would think that it wouldn't be more than like a 6-month period, right? You would think it would be like a couple months, 3 months maybe.
I think it was 2 years.
Wow. See, 2 years is a long time to like,
I think
I
I
can't
came to live.
imagine, like, I just can't imagine having a child for 2 years and being like, I'm going to go ahead and send you back. And I'm sure that probably happens a lot.
From what I heard is my mom who adopted me, I call her my mom, obviously, but
Yeah.
grandma, which is my mom's mom, wanted her to take me back, dude.
Not surprising, right?
Yeah, she was just grandma was old and from that era, and I think she just thought I was doomed from the start. But yeah, she was
Well,
like,
I think it's one of those things where it's funny. I had a new client and they adopted, and she didn't tell any of her family that her child, I can't remember if it's a boy or girl, but that her child was addicted to drugs. And so they
"Mm,
know that, but they didn't tell any of their family. And I said, okay, well, why? I mean, I obviously can assume why, but why? And she's like, because I didn't want to give any of them these preconceived notions about this child. And like, that was a choice that we made, which I think is so awesome. But like, you look back into the day of like, even your grandma's generation, like everything had to be perfect, right? Like, you had to always look your best. You always had to be your best. And so to choose something that already in their minds was like defected, why would you do
mhm."
that? But
Yeah, and I think I had a lot of cognitive issues. I think I had a lot of cognitive issues
well, of
as
course, because
well.
you were
So
addicted to drugs and alcohol.
yeah, so I think my grandma had a hard time accepting that. And like you said, it takes it back to her era where even mental health wasn't even a thing. Like,
Hmm. They still
so
don't really grasp it for those who are still like around, They have to
yeah,
what do you mean? That kid just is a brat or whatever that looks like.
even
Um,
autism wasn't a thing.
I mean, it probably was a thing. They just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Now you're like, makes sense about Uncle Jimmy. You know?
Right.
Um, but okay, so 91 officially adopted. So you went into a family being the only girl, the youngest, and
Mhm.
you and your youngest brother. So we're just gonna give names because it is what it is, and they're all gonna listen. So you're welcome. But Jason is the youngest brother. So Joe, which is my dad, he's the oldest. Then there's Patrick is the middle, Jason's the youngest. And so what's your age difference between you and Jason?
I think we're all 5 years apart.
Okay. So then so 5 years from Jay, 10 from Patrick, 15 from Joseph.
Hmm.
So which is crazy. So basically going into a home like Joe was probably the end of high school, like getting ready to be like out.
I think the year that I moved in, he was getting ready to move out.
So basically didn't even grow up with him, really.
Mm-mm.
So how did you feel? Do you remember feelings of coming into a family of being the youngest girl in um a house of boys?
There's certain things I remember, and one of the things I remember is me not wanting to leave my mom's side.
Okay.
My dad actually told me of a time that I spit on him because I didn't want to be around older men.
Okay.
I wonder if your dad has this picture. Your dad took a picture, a Polaroid picture. My mom had to run to the store, and she left me at home with the boys. Dad was at work, so I was at home with Joseph, Patrick, and Jason. And I was in my bed screaming my freaking head off. And Joseph freaking came and took a picture of me freaking crying and
You know what's
screaming in
funny
my
is I
bed.
wonder if he was more traumatized of you and why he didn't want his own kids versus me and my brother.
Possibly. He probably thought it was way easier, man. They're not babies. I could just come in.
Okay, so that picture with you and Joseph taking it, were all the boys very traumatized and like, what do we do with her? Why won't she stop crying?
No, they were laughing, dude. They thought it was great.
So was your main issue just with men? Were you like that
Yeah,
with women too?
no, just with men.
But have no idea why.
Nope.
Which, because I'm assuming, did you leave the from the hospital and went straight to a foster mom? Or do you not know that?
I was in the hospital for 11 days.
Okay.
Because of the drug withdrawals and the alcohol withdrawals. So I was there. And then the foster mom picked me up on the 26th. And then she was married too. So she had a husband and a daughter
Okay.
who, yeah, helped run that business. So I'm not really sure.
Interesting.
But it is something that I question all the time.
Yeah. Because what were those issues? So how did you feel growing up in a house full of boys? How was that coming into
Um,
that situation?
I don't really remember. And that's crazy because, like, I have like core memories of certain things, but I don't remember going there. I don't remember what it was like or how I felt. But there's pictures of me in those settings and I look completely lost. Like, I don't know, like I'm not all there and then I'm very confused and scared. So yeah, there's like a lot of pictures of me like not smiling when I was younger and then just kind of like there's always a picture of me looking somewhere else but the camera.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like and then Jason's always on the side of me with a big ass smile and I'm just right there all confused.
Like,
So
well,
I
why
have
am
no
I
idea.
here? What's your favorite like core memory that you have of like your childhood that you can remember?
My mom used to make homemade Halloween costumes.
Okay.
So I think it was the first Halloween that I remembered going trick-or-treating with my brothers and they were all dressed up in their homemade costumes too. And then Christmas was pretty cool too. So I remember stuff like that. But I don't really remember anything other than like family get-togethers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't remember just being at home, but I remember my mom told me about a story that Patrick tried to give me a piggyback ride and she said I was like 4 years old
Oh gosh.
and I freaking grabbed him by his hair and like tried to like rip his freaking hair out. And Patrick was like crying and screaming. But
Sounds
I
like the
remember,
same person nowadays.
right? But yeah, I don't remember anything. And then when they told me I was adopted, we went out to like a beach. It was
How old
like
were you?
I think I was like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was the only time that I ever remember my mom and my dad telling me that I was adopted. It was my dad who told me. And I remember being at the beach and me and we have pictures of that beach day too. And it like there's a bunch of pictures of me and Jason throwing sticks in the water or whatever. And I remember sitting on the stand, and then my dad was like, he asked me something along the lines of, do you remember coming here like when you were younger or when you were this age? I can't remember how the conversation was. And I said something to the effect of like, oh yeah, I do remember. And then my dad said something like, well, it's so crazy because it doesn't make any sense. But I remember him saying, do you remember coming to the beach when you were this age? And of course, I probably lied and said, oh yeah, I remember that. And then my dad being like, well, you didn't because you were adopted. We adopted you or something like that. I just remember being like so confused, like
Like it was
you're
like
asking
a
me,
trick question.
yeah, like you're asking me if I remember something, but then being like, well, it didn't happen because we adopted you. Like you were adopted. It
Interesting
was really
tactic.
weird, huh?
I said interesting tactic.
It was odd.
Like,
Like I
why
can't
wouldn't you
remember.
ask like a legitimate, like, do you remember coming into our home? You know, like something to where maybe you could be like, yes, no, maybe, but like, why ask you? I don't know. It's like a weird test.
It
Do
was.
you like, did you ever feel like before he told you, did you ever feel like, I don't feel like I'm a part of this family or in this family, or like there was like some disconnect somewhere?
Nope.
You just
I
always
didn't. I literally did not. Like that's why I was so confused. And I swear to God, I thought he was lying
Mhm.
because I feel like I can blend in with them like
Yeah.
really good. Like I'm not a Chinese kid, whatever. Like I
Yeah.
look like I'm their kid. So it was weird. And I was like, I don't even think I really understood what it meant. But supposedly my mom said she's been telling me that I was adopted since I was way younger. But I mean, how can any child really understand what
Yeah.
that means?
Yeah, because 'cause you're not gonna be like,
So
"Oh, okay." Especially if you didn't feel that way. You didn't feel a disconnect, you didn't feel, which I guess in a sense is like a good thing that you didn't feel a disconnect, I guess, at that time. So, like, when he did tell you that you were adopted, as you got older, did they go into any details of, like, your mom or you being born addicted to drugs and alcohol or anything like that, or did it just not get talked about?
oh my God. So growing up and having all the issues that I had, every single time that my mom had to like either advocate for me in the educational system or in the medical, like doctor's appointments and stuff like that,
Mhm.
she always brought it up. Like she was born addicted to alcohol and cocaine. Like it was always brought up because that was like her excuse or her reason. Like I feel like growing up, she always tried to find something wrong with me.
Yeah. Or there was like
Uh,
a reason for your behavior, like has to be
Yeah.
this or whatever. And it's funny because like, you know, when Joe and my mom got together, I was, I think, around 6. I mean, they got married when I was 8. So, and we're only a year apart. And so like I don't even remember knowing, I don't think I knew anything until maybe middle school. Um I mean, at that time when I was little, I don't think we even talked like, "Oh, you being adopted," or whatever, and I wouldn't even have known what that was anyway. And I don't
Yeah.
remember there ever being discussions, but maybe like if I was gonna ask any questions, it probably would have been like middle school or like even high school. But even then, I asked that question about like, was that told to you? Because I feel like you being someone who was born already addicted to drugs and alcohol, there needed to be a huge conversation with you on like what that looks like growing up, because we all know when we hit that experimental age, we're going to drink, we're going to, smoke weed or do whatever. Like everybody teeters different lines. And so that was like a huge thing that I feel like should have been talked about with you, in the sense of like, not saying that that would have stopped you from doing anything, but at least there would have been that prep of, hey, you are somebody compared to like with me, like, I don't have an addictive personality. Not saying that I can't be addicted to something, but it's not like running through my veins of like,
Yeah.
you could do it one time. I was always afraid and it's funny because like my story of like my my dad and just being in the world that he was in, like I was always afraid of like, oh my God, I'm gonna be that kid that does like ecstasy the one time and freaking dies. Like I was all paranoid and scared. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm like so vanilla when it comes to any of that. I'm like, I can't even handle freaking caffeine. Okay. Coffee gives me anxiety. And I was always like that. Like I never wanted to dabble into anything. And I think it was like that fear, which we're all different, right? Like you could have the one kid who literally does nothing that their parents ever did. And then you have the kid who's like balls to the wall, I'm gonna do it all. And
Yeah.
that's why I wondered, like, was that even discussed with you on what that could look like?
No, and it kind of like trips me out that you're even saying this because I like my youngest is on the spectrum. She has autism.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of the things that she does reminds me of how I was as a kid, like the lack of fear,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't go into doing drugs thinking that I'm gonna die. Like I went into it like we're gonna do this. It wasn't even a second thought. Like, and then what's crazy is that I felt like I was neglected in the aspect of my parents didn't educate me
Mm-hmm.
when I went into middle school. And I don't know if it was because they didn't think that kids that age were using yet or whatever, but like my dad never was like, these drugs can kill you. My mom was never like, this is what you need to watch out for. And that's why I feel like I'm so overprotective with my now daughter who's in middle school. Like, I'm like, vaping's gonna freaking kill you. This is like, if you try this drug, this is what it does to your heart and your brain. Like, no one told me anything about anything.
I
I
think they
felt like,
also stem from that generation of like, if we don't talk about it, it's not happening.
yeah.
Which is
But I,
crazy because what you're like, because Papa Bear, he was a probation officer, correct? So he knew what was around and he knew what people were capable because he worked with juveniles. So like, I think it was just more stemming of like, if we don't talk about it, it's not happening and we just don't address it, or even that part of like, not my family, not my kids, not my people, versus now we've now learned that if you don't talk about it, how does anybody know? Just like, things have escalated to where like, I mean, we've now had to learn what fentanyl was. I never even knew. And also what's crazy is I didn't even know that they gave you fentanyl like for pain in the hospital. I didn't even know like what it even was. And so things have like escalated where it's like you don't have a choice but to talk to your kids now, because how many people go and like take a piece of food from somebody or take a drink out of somebody else's cup from somewhere, like we're all, and then that could just be so innocently, and somebody could have put like the date rape drug in there or whatever and not. So it's like you have to have those conversations. So I think definitely it was, like I said, not that if they would have said something to you doesn't necessarily mean you wouldn't have gone down that road, but at least you would have been given the tools or been like, well, we told you what could have happened and you still made the choice, because we all have choices to make, right? But you
yeah.
weren't even given the tools to like even know what that even looked like.
Yeah, I think my dad was in super denial about his own household because he was just so
Possibly
wrapped up.
fearful too. That could have been fear-based too.
Yeah, but I just feel like, and the majority of my addiction happened underneath their roof. So that's another thing like that I think about often is like, how do you not know that my light is on in my room for 3 nights in a row and you're not coming in to be like, what the hell is going on? Why is my kid up all night?
Yeah.
Like,
This isn't just insomnia.
no. And then when I was 13, I was self-harming, and I
I
remember
remember
my
that.
dad. Huh?
I remember that.
I remember my dad saw some cuts on my arm or something like that, and he
You
just,
used to cut your legs up really bad. That's what I remember.
yeah, my dad would say, "I really wish you wouldn't do that." And I would be like, "I'm sorry?" Like, there was no, "Okay, well, you're doing this, so this is the plan. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to fucking get you into some place and get you a therapist, have somebody, like, it was
There was no
nothing
like
like that."
intervention type of thing happening. So, at what age were you when you first started any type of drug, whatever that was?
I was 13 and I was in 6th grade, I
And what did
believe.
you do? What was your first?
I smoked weed for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was smoking cigarettes too. And that lasted for like a good year. And then uh I was at my friend's house and she did not smoke cigarettes or smoke weed because her mom was like a heavy addict, like a heavy meth addict.
Mhm.
And I remember peer pressuring the fuck out of her. Like, it was so bad. I would like not stop bugging her because I wanted somebody to smoke with. And like, she would go with me outside so I could do it, but I wanted somebody to do it with me.
Yeah.
And so I remember she caved and she ended up freaking smoking cigarettes and smoking weed with me that night. And then we didn't see each other for a while. And then my mom got me a gym pass to the 24-hour fitness, the one at the Whitwood.
Uh-huh.
And my friend, I don't even want to say her name because we still talk, but my friend, her mom also got her a pass. And I remember my mom taking us to the gym one night and me and my friend being like, let's go down to the sauna. Like, I want to show you something. So like there was like this little area where you went down, there was like a sauna, a jacuzzi, and like a pool.
Mhm.
And so we went down there and she pulled out this little baggie with like some white stuff in it. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, I don't know, but it was in my mom's drawer and we're gonna fucking do it. And I was just like, okay. You're like,
It's like it could be rat poison and you're like, "Sign me up."
yeah, that's the thing. Like, there was no fear there. It was like, my friend said, we're gonna do it and we're gonna do it. So like, I remember she crushed it up and like there wasn't even enough for like a whole line, but like two little bumps, me and her freaking sniffed it. And we were fucking walking around that track like a bunch of crackheads, just like talking and talking and talking. And I remember not being able to sleep that night. And I called her like at 4 o'clock in the morning and she told me, oh, it's normal. Like, you'll eventually come down and it'll be over. And then I just remember after that, I was completely hooked. So
And
I
you were
just,
how old then?
14.
So 14. So you peer pressured her into smoking weed and cigarettes, and then she got you into the hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then how long did you do that?
I quit when I was 18.
Okay. And it's so funny because like we saw each other over the years through all this, and that's why I say like I'm so vanilla and so like it was one of those like I knew you were in a sense a bad kid, right? Like you did stuff that you hung out with people that I wouldn't hang out with, you did things that I wouldn't do. But we were family, so we would see each other,
Mhm.
all the time with different things. But like I would have never thought to like hearing even now like I didn't know that you did meth and all those things, and it was just like, man, like I knew you were doing stuff, but I think too I didn't care to like ask, and not because I didn't care, but I think for me it was such like that world was such a triggering thing for me to where then it
Mhm.
was like I just don't even need to be around it. And so I would see
Yeah.
you doing like during family events and things like that. And I think people would expect us to be like so much closer because we're only a year apart. But like you lived such a different life than like what I lived. And not that I judged, but it was just like, oh, Shauna's being crazy and Shauna's being Shauna. And you just kind of let her do her thing and, you enjoy her when she's around and that's kind of it. And so it's just crazy knowing the things that you were actually doing because I didn't know at the time. I mean, I didn't know what all of, and to the
But
extent,
I wasn't an active user. Like
yeah,
I still smoked weed and I still smoked cigarettes. So like me and my friends like either did it on the weekends and then be sober right when we be back in school, or like there was times where I took like a few months like without doing it. So it wasn't like consistently from 14 to 18 that I used every week or every day. Um it wasn't until I told my parents about the molestation that I went through because of my uncle and my dad not believing me that's when it just was like, we're gonna friggin' I think I used for like a full 30 days straight.
mm-hmm.
And then something happened with my friend and I don't want to get into that because it's
No, and
pretty
that's fine.
bad. Yeah, but something happened with my friend and that was enough for me to be like, okay, I'm done. And
Mm-hmm.
it was crazy because I didn't withdraw. I didn't get sick. I didn't go through any of that. It was like a hardcore decision that I made and that was it. And I never went back. So it was like, it was cool. I slept for 2 days. I ate and then I was back to being
Back
a
to
regular
normal.
human being. Yeah.
Which is crazy because, everybody has their own stories of addiction and withdrawing and, what that looks like for everybody. And there's a lot of people who struggle even just with alcohol. Like we have some people that we know and um, they just can't get it together. And I think though, like you also have to have the will to like want to. Um, but it's just interesting hearing like yours because it's like you were literally born into this world addicted. And then how you could now you've been clean off of what, like hardcore drugs for how long?
I think it's 20 years.
So 20 years and then you stopped drinking alcohol. How long was that?
Um, I stopped drinking alcohol on Corey's 30th birthday. So 9 years.
Okay, so 9 years. And then you were still California sober, right? So you were still smoking weed for a little bit and then you stopped that how long ago?
2022.
Okay, so that's been 2 years. And then most recently, you detoxed off of edibles, and so that's been what, almost a couple months now?
Yeah, since November, I believe.
Okay. So, which is so crazy because like you've just like taken these like necessary things and during this whole time like you have 3 kids. Like you have William, you have Mia, which William is 18, Mia's about to be 12, right? And then
Hmm.
Bailey is 7. And so during this time, which I think which is why I tell you, like, you've come so far with all those things. And obviously, like, you weren't the best person that you could be for William. You weren't the best that you could be for Mia. Probably not 100% for Bailey either, but definitely more present with her out of any of the other kids. But
Yes.
now you have this time in life where you can now really redeem yourself and make up for, I mean, you can never fully make up for things, but I think if they give you the opportunity to just be a parent in the present day, then you now at this moment, which you are going to be, which, what are you, 38?
Hmm.
Yeah. Like you still have so many years of being like a good parent or, role model or whatever. I think it's amazing, like all the things that you've overcome, um, to where like you're at today. Obviously, things aren't perfect. You're still like on the grind and having to figure things out, but at least you're completely sober and have like a clear mind of like, okay, this is what I need to do next.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I honestly didn't think that I would be sober completely off the cannabis because the cannabis is what helped me recover from the meth.
Mhm.
Like, but then you're not fully recovered. You're just kind of like you're masking something with something else. And
Mhm.
although it's not as bad as the meth, of course, but you're still doing damage to your lungs. You're still doing damage to your liver. You're still not fully aware, like mentally. Like, I can't even tell you, like, dude, when I was on edibles, I really didn't care about anything. And now that I'm clean, I'm like, holy shit, like, what have we done? And it's just like, now we have to get back on track. And that's what's keeping me freaking sober, is being pissed off about the fact that, man, like, I thought I had it all together, and like, I'm realizing and more clear-headed that I really don't. And so this year is basically my focus on staying sober off the edibles, putting all of our energy into getting work
Mm-hmm.
and, getting the car fixed, being able to pay our rent on our own, not like, that when the day comes that we don't have to ask family for financial help, like, I swear I could die happy. Because, I mean, yes, living in California is hard, but it is possible if you do the things that you're supposed to do. Like, two parents are supposed to have two jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's all obtainable if we put in the effort to do it. So,
Well, I mean, you were born and raised there. I think it's so different. Like, I tell people, like, we're used to the grind when you're living there. Like, I mean, obviously, if I wanted, like, one of the biggest reasons for us leaving was because, like, so that my brother and his family and me could have the opportunity to have more things. Because at the end of the day, like, when I moved, I was single. And it was like, if I stayed in California, doesn't mean you were going to meet somebody, doesn't mean, and like, in order to like have a house or have a thing, like, you have to have a 2-income household. Like, you just do in California. And so, but I think, like, I mean, I lived on my own. I lived in an apartment. I would have never been able to own a home, but I mean, I could have stayed there and still like worked my 2 to 3 jobs. And it's not that I didn't have a life, because I still did have a life, but I think it's definitely possible. But it's all up to, like, we're used to the grind. And then, like, it was funny coming here. I remember when I went into a salon and people were like these girls at the salon were working 3 days a week. And I was like, huh? I'm like, salons are closed Sunday, Monday. Everybody worked Tuesday through Saturday. Like, that's what it was. And we all
mhm.
worked from the moment we opened to the moment we closed. It was like you were there from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever that looked like. And so it was funny because I'm like, well, can I work 5 days? And they're like, oh, you want to? And I'm like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
But they were also making like more money than what I was even making. Like, it was just very interesting. But it's like, it's not possible. But if you can make your life easier, then of course, like, why not take that opportunity to be able to be like, okay, well, maybe if I go somewhere else, then I don't have to work 2 jobs, or we don't have to like eat the bare minimum of things, or we can splurge every now and then. But I think it's good for you guys to have like these small little obtainable goals to get where you want to go.
Yeah, and one thing that I haven't even talked about really is that when that did happen, when I got like really heavy into my addiction and I left
Mm-hmm.
home, I actually was homeless on the street for like, I don't know, like 8 months. And every time I passed by this church off Washington Boulevard, I can just picture the nights that I slept. Like, there was a tire shop right next to it. So they had like a bunch of pallets and cardboard and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I literally made myself like a makeshift bed behind this church on the grass. Like, and I remember this other homeless person who was hiding within the church too, would like watch my back while I slept. And like, that was another, like, these things like basically put me on the path to get clean. Like, I experienced having to wake up at the church at 6 o'clock in the morning and walk to the gas station and take a shower in the state. I
Mm-hmm.
literally have taken a shower at Michigan Park with bottles of water and like inside of a bathroom. Like, so I think all of those things that I've experienced and coming out of it really showed me that it is possible to like turn your life around and come out of addiction if you really want it. Because,
Well, and
dude,
you were strong enough to, to me, if you're strong enough to live that life, you're also strong enough to get yourself to where you are. And I think, like, you know, just to also make it clear to everybody is like, obviously us, like me and my dad, your brother, like none of us knew any of that. I mean, you know, you and I had a falling out 13, 14 years ago and didn't speak. Because I was just like, fuck you, Shauna. Like, don't call me again. And and there was drama that happened with that. But it's like, none of us knew how bad it was. And I think for you, like, you didn't want people to know. You didn't necessarily, it's not that you didn't want the help, but I think sometimes in situations like that, people get like, well, why am I going to go and burden somebody else with like my stuff? And I think sometimes like for you and probably a lot of things that you went through, you may felt like you deserved the life that you were living. And like, I did this to myself, so I'm the one that has to get me out of it or do it or whatever. I mean, I don't really know what you were feeling at that time. I just know that like you didn't tell anybody, until like later on. Like we
Me and
just
your dad
found that
talked
out.
about this. Yeah, me and your dad talked about this recently, and he said the same thing. And I was truthful with him about the fact that I didn't even know that contacting him was an option
Mm-hmm.
because we like it's not his fault either. Like I told him that I was like, dude, we all grew up with this pre-notion that we don't have any relationship, we don't talk about anything. Like I literally didn't think that because dude, I mean, to be honest, I love my brother Jason, but I just don't think that that would have ever been an option. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I would have called him and been like, can I come stay with you, he'd probably be like, absolutely not,
Yeah.
because he has to think about his family and his children and whatever the case is. So yes, I did feel like a burden in that aspect, but when it came to like Joseph, like I literally had no idea that that was even an option.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I remember growing up and I always used to tell Joe, like, I mean, Joe's always been so serious. I think he's gotten better at his older age. But I just remember you were always so afraid of him. And he'd be like, why? I'm like, what do you mean why? Like, everybody's afraid of you. You just like sit there stoic and you don't say anything to anybody. Like, nobody knows what you're thinking. That's a scary person. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that you didn't feel or know that that like could have been an option. And who knows how he would have like really handled it. I mean, he would have gone to my mom, and my mom's the type of like, she's like a fixer, which is probably where like I get mine from. And she would have been like, absolutely, bring her in, like we'll put her on the floor somewhere or whatever. Like my mom would have definitely been someone who, just because of the stuff that she's gone through and been through. And so it was like, she's a collector of people and animals is what we always say. She's like the first one.
so funny. I love your mom.
Yeah. Somebody needs something? Come on over. And so Joe probably would have been like, what the hell is wrong with you? But no, I just think like, hearing all these things where I think there's a lot of people who can probably identify and, especially when you're dealing with people, but like your addiction, I feel like is not like a normal addiction from what you hear from people.
Like your typical stereotype type of addiction.
No, and I feel like you were more harmful to yourself than you were to other people around you. So like, how usually you hear about people who are like, I mean, you were growing up, like you were definitely someone who was a compulsive liar for sure. But I think most people who are in those states are, because you're also trying to fake the funk, right? Like you're trying to portray that like, no, you're not doing anything wrong or you're doing this. Like everyone ends up becoming a liar because that's their survival mode. Like, I don't need anybody to be on me. I don't need anybody to know what the hell I'm doing or figure it out. So you're constantly just like creating these lies. Which
Because
then,
for me it wasn't okay, well, why are you lying? It was more or less like, I'm judging you because you are a liar. Like I couldn't come with the truth because I'm automatically going to be judged. So that's why I'm just like, fuck it, man. Like, who cares? Like, if they know or not know, like, I already felt like I was on my own anyways, and if I say anything, I'm not gonna get the help I need. I'm just gonna get fucking punished and judged. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just easier to be like, yeah, I went to school. Yeah, I did my homework. Yeah, this, yeah, that. Because if not, it wasn't like, okay, well, how can we help you get on track? That was never said to me. It was never like, well, let's help you. Let's figure this out. None of that. None of
Mm-hmm.
that. So I was just like, you know what? Especially when I got with my son's dad at a young age, like I was judged for that. I was judged for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was intense. And still, like, I mean, I still fucking my little white lies here and there, but I'm fucking learning just to be upfront about what's happening in my life and what I don't do or take accountability for.
Well, and I think too, the biggest thing is like you have more self-awareness than you ever have had before. I think like that was one of the things when we went back home for Papa Bear's funeral. I remember I was like, so my mom's like, how are you going to feel seeing Shauna? Because we had such a big extreme fallout where I just cut you off. I mean, I cut your mom off for a couple years, but then I couldn't fully cut her off because she still comes around.
Mhm.
So I'm like, well, damn, can't get rid of that one. But I was like, I don't know, kind of gives me anxiety a little bit because I knew Shauna 13 years ago. And that was the person that I didn't care to be around. And so then fast forward. So that's why like me now, us, and like we talk every day and all the things. And it's just, I've seen so much growth just like in you. I mean, obviously you gave a little white lie and I smacked the shit out of you. And I was like, don't lie to me. Because also it was such a dumb lie. Like, I'm like, just for context, guys, I literally just sent her an email for her to send to her husband. And she's like, he's looking at it right now. And I'm like, she didn't even tell him about it. She did, and I was like, why would you like, it was just the dumbest lie where I was like, seriously? And how I feel about people, and I would tell my ex-husband this all the time. If you lie about small things, you're definitely going to lie about big things. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just always about like, I am honest to a fault. I am direct to a fault, but I would much rather be that person where anything and everything. And not saying like we all can tell like little white lies, or whether it's we do it to, not hurt those people's feelings or whatever. But I just feel like it doesn't get any of us anywhere. And like, I barely remember shit to begin with. So if I tell you a freaking even little white lie, then I have to remember that I told you the white lie. And I just don't have the brain capacity for any of that. So it's like, just be honest.
Tune into part 2 of this episode of A Little Wine and a Whole Lot of Tea.